What is up, everybody? Thank you once again for joining us here on the Under the Cage podcast. I'm your host, Sky Rudlow. This week we are in Orlando, Florida, and we are sitting down with the owner of Combat Night Mixed Martial Arts Promotion, Mitchell Chamale. Mitchell has been a friend of mine for many, many years. I have watched him build and grow his promotion over the years into one of the largest and most successful promotions in all of Florida and pretty much the entire Southeast. So we are going to sit down, listen to a little bit of the story of how Combat Night came to be, Mitchell's combat experience, and all the things that led to him becoming one of the best promotions in the state. So thanks for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. What is up, Mixed Martial Arts fam? Welcome to another episode of Under the Cage. I am your host, Coach Sky Rudlow, and today we are joined by Mitchell Chamale. Thank you so much for sitting down with us and doing this.
How you doing, man?
Great. We are here in Orlando, Florida at the headquarters. Mitchell is the owner of Combat Night, Mixed Martial Arts Promotion here in Florida and occasionally Georgia, right?
Yeah, occasionally Georgia.
Yep. And also a former fighter with a pretty decent record, veteran of ONE FC now.
Yep.
So very cool, very cool. So the way I typically start these things, I like to have the fighters.
No, he's good.
Okay, I like to have the fighters and coaches, promoters, tell me a little bit about your early days and how you got into the sport. Well, what was the beginning for all this for you?
All right, I'll try to make it quick because I've got a lot of history in the sport. But honestly, I got started doing a judo class at TCC, and I met a guy that knew some jiu-jitsu. I rolled around with him for a little bit and learned a little bit about submissions, and I didn't like that he was beating me. And then he took me to a gym called World Vibe, which is very old school Tallahassee, and Lateef Bryant, David, and those guys. Rob Kahn used to come down and do like belt testing for us. And then after that, I was there for a little bit, and obviously the name World Vibe, a little bit hippie. I think they smoked more than they trained. Great guys, I love them, but I was getting a real competitive itch again. I had wrestled in high school, so I heard about a guy named Josh Saman that was doing a gym. He had just left TMMA, Tallahassee Mixed Martial Arts, and he was starting his own little gym. So I thought, let me go check that out. And I met up with Josh and them, started training with them, and honestly, I was training for MMA, like actual MMA, for maybe 2 weeks, and I got offered my first fight.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was. I got thrown right into it. I didn't realize it was a professional fight at the time. I was actually going to fight one of Richard Cox's boys, and then he got injured, and I ended up making my professional debut like 2 months later, 3 months later. You know, back then there was no amateur, so there was no opportunity to learn and grow as an amateur. It was you go pro or you can go fight in Georgia with like these big puffies and shin guards, and that just didn't feel like a fight to me. So I went pro in Florida and took a couple of fights, ended up getting a fight offer in Bellator. I lost that fight against a stud named Brian Exton at the time. And then I took a couple more fights, and eventually I realized I was a professional fighter. You know, to be honest with you, I didn't realize that's what I was. I was getting paid. And one day, actually, when Bellator called, that's when I realized, like, oh, I'm a professional fighter. Bellator's offering me a fight. Yeah. Josh laughed at me and was like, you're a fucking idiot. You've been a professional since the first fight you took. And then, you know, during the course of that, there was no promotion in Tallahassee. There used to be one called Uber Smash. It faded away. And we were looking for an opportunity to have some of our athletes compete out of a gym called C4. So we went to visit Rise of a Warrior. Ralph Valdez, one of your students, came down. He had a fight. We took him down there, recorded him, and the event was amazing. It was like the lights, the cameras. It was a dope event, and we were like, wow. We had been fighting in like barns in Georgia, so we had no idea that this was something you could do even like indoors in a nice venue. So on the way back, we decided we're going to start a promotion. So we sat in the car on a ripped off piece of envelope, wrote our business plan out, who would fight, who would sponsor, when we would do it. And that was really it, man. We hit the ground running on Monday. I had like $15,000 in savings. It was my life savings at the time. I agreed for some odd reason to throw it all into an MMA promotion and something I had never done before. And Monday morning we got hit the ground running, started combat night. We still fought. I still fought. Josh still fought. He went on to the UFC. And then, eventually it took off. We just realized we had something gold there. And now we have 170 events under our belt. And through the course of that, I met so many people. One of my good friends, Troy Worthen, came up with us. And then through that interaction of me and Troy being like brothers, I ended up cornering him out in Singapore. And I took my last fight for one championship. It was literally a day of fight. They offered me, I think he was number 3 in the world at the time, a guy named Shuya Kimakova, at 145, a couple weight classes up. I took it and I lost. And that was the end of my fight career. I don't think I'll take any more fights. Who knows though? They say fighters always get that itch. So I might be back in there one day. But as it stands right now, I'm pretty good not fighting again. And just running combat night. I love watching these athletes grow and learn and develop their skills to where they make it to the UFC. You saw Val Woodburn is over at my house right now using the sauna. Yeah. It's just like I love being a part of this sport, man, and watching and helping all these young athletes see their true potential and make it to the top.
Okay, yeah. Well, I always thought Josh was a part owner of the Uber Smash things back in the day. I didn't, because I was fighting on those myself.
Yeah. No, he was just a promoter.
Okay,
he just helped. He helped like. He agreed, like, I think it was, he had an agreement with them for every ticket that was sold that he sold, which was distributed out to all the fighters.
Right.
He got a cut of those tickets in addition to our cut. So he was, smart man. He always was finding ways to hustle and make money.
Yeah, that's cool. What were your plans before all this? Because, this kind of whirlwinded on you, it sounds like. It didn't seem like promoter was your long-term plan for life, It just kind of went and saw a show and decided to do it. What were you working towards before that?
Fighting wasn't even a plan, to be honest with you. I was in school. I was in college in Tallahassee. So that's where the judo class came in. I guess I should have highlighted that. I was in school I was pre-law. I was doing, I was going to go to law school. While I was in my senior year of school, I cheered for Florida State University. So I was a cheerleader as well. And it was my senior year that I fell into MMA with Josh and met all the guys. And I was like, man, I really like this. I took my first fight. It was a pro fight. I didn't know. So my second fight, like 3 months later, still didn't know I was a pro. I was 2-0. And then when Bellator called, I said to myself, like, man, I got to be decent. Bellator's offering me a fight. Let me see how far I can go with this. So I told myself, I graduated with from Florida State. And I said, I'm going to give myself 2 years. We'll give myself 2 years and we'll see what I can do in MMA, what I can do in mixed martial arts. I went out to train with Greg Jackson and them. And at Cowboys Ranch, and that was my first real experience of like a real gym. Before that, we were just knuckleheads beating each other up in a fucking abandoned building. So it wasn't really, there was no instruction. And when I went there, I was like, shit, all right, this is like legit training. I did pretty well. I didn't get the snot beat out of me every day. When I came back, I signed up at Zecro in Tallahassee, Felipe School, and
episode 2.
So I decided I was going to wait till I got my blue belt to fight again. I ended up getting my blue belt in like 2 months, 3 months. And I was like, well, I guess, it's time for me to fight again. I got my blue belt and then I picked back up fighting. And the promotion was really how I transitioned into the promoter thing was really just because there was no promotion happening in Tallahassee. There was a guy, I can't think of his name right now, but he was a scumbag. He owns a lot of property in Tallahassee and he was the guy who owned C4 and he had promised us he was going to do an event. He's going to run an event. And I guess he just didn't see the business sense in it. He never actually ended up doing it. So after a year or two of him not doing it, we decided we would do it. And it was all amateurs at first. So our first like 80 events were amateur events. And then, I just fell into it. But even I didn't even think promoting was a thing for me because even as doing jujitsu is my passion. I grew up as a wrestler, grappling is my passion. I thought I was going to be a coach. I thought I was going to open a gym one day. And I would sell off into the sunset being a black belt instructor. And that would be that was like my dream job. And boy, was I wrong. Because now I think about having to teach kids classes and collect membership money and be at a spot every single day, like locked into something. It's like, I never want to do that now. But that was my original goal when I first started doing MMA, was like, I want to be an instructor one day. I want to own a school and I want to be a coach. But then I just fell into promoting just by accident, honestly.
Cool. So that first show, Tallahassee Combat Night 1, how did that go? Was that like, oh, this went smooth, or I can't imagine that you went super smooth sailing?
I mean, it went pretty smooth for two knucklehead kids
Right.
putting it together and not really having an idea of what we were doing. We had been to events, so our philosophy, our plan was, what do we like? What don't we like? What makes sense? What doesn't make sense? So we were just kind of thinking like we had already seen promotions fail. We already seen promotions fall, and we've seen the way promotions treated fighters. I remember fighting for a promotion, getting paid $300 and $300 and asking for a free t-shirt and them telling me to go to the merch table and spend $20. And I'm like, I just fought. After my medical bills, after my gas, after my training, my food, I paid money to fight.
Yeah.
You won't give me a damn $20 cheap Gildan t-shirt. So stuff like that, we implemented those ideas of taking care of our fighters and doing right by them first. We didn't put our fans first. We didn't put our sponsors first. From the get, we were putting our fighters first. And I mean, it worked. Even the first event was successful. We made money and we made a couple $1,000s. We were shocked, honestly. Like I was shocked. I got my money back and we made some money. But I had to keep reinvesting that life savings for probably 10 events. And some of those events we barely scraped by. Some of those events, we went to Jacksonville pretty early. We expanded, which is stupid. Like thinking about it now, if somebody told me they wanted to start an event promotion and they wanted to 4 events in, go across the state and do an event somewhere else, I would tell them like, you're stupid. Don't do that. Like build your brand here in this town and then, slowly move around the state. But I think by Combat Night 20, we were already in 4 different cities. So as reckless as we were, we managed to be pretty successful through it all.
Yeah, I would definitely say that paid off for you, because I will say for Combat Night, I don't really know of any other promotion in Florida or really anywhere, but not that I operate much out of Florida, that is as widespread as you guys. Like you guys are all over the state, north to south, so you seem to have a lot of brand recognition from that. Do you talk to other promoters and stuff? I don't see a lot of them doing that as much as you guys.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's definitely scary and it's a headache. Sometimes like right now we have 4 events in the next 2 months, and 3 of them are in the next month, and we're literally talking. You think average of 20 to 25 fights per card, so that's 50 fighters, 150 fighters. That's probably 40 coaches. That's 3 different venue owners. That's 20 different sponsors. That's, the list goes on and on of how many people we're having to communicate with on a daily basis. So it's not easy by any means, but, I wanted to be a lawyer. So I like talking.
Yeah.
So that there's like, I'm lucky that the things it takes to be a great promoter, I'm already good at naturally when it comes to talking and being charismatic and relating to, I am a fighter. So I can talk to a fighter in a different way than, Joe Schmo that's running one event in one city. And it's funny because like even coming up, promoters would talk to me some kind of way, and I'd be like, "Who the fuck is this guy talking to me? Like without me, there is no show. Without me, he can't do anything. I'm the one selling tickets, and he's talking to me like I'm trash." But like I understand what fighters are going through when they're cutting weight, when they're at weigh-ins. All these things. I get it, so I can approach them a little differently because I can relate to them. And I think that's really, if I had to say, like the biggest key to our success is that, just being able to relate to the athletes and keeping them number one.
That's another one that's pretty unique, not just the number of shows, but even the biggest promotion in the world, the head guy is not a fighter, like other promotions around Florida, some that are pretty damn successful. I haven't personally come across another event where the promoter and the owner are fighters. So that's a huge benefit for you guys, I think, just being able to understand the coaches, be able to understand the camps, the fighters, just all those different personalities and work with them.
For sure.
And that's got to be super helpful. And putting that many shows on, shout out to Richard Cox on the matchmaking.
Yeah, matchmaking, he's great at it. And I'm thankful because he's taught me how to matchmake too. I'm a killer. Like I get it now. I understand it because Richard's taught me. And I'm like his little prodigy when it comes to matchmaking. So now we can tackle it with 2 heads. If we have a problem, if there's a last minute pull out, it's not just one person looking. Now there's 2 people looking, So, but again, Richard Cox is he's a beast. And he's the only person. Ramsey's been with us. Our production has been with us for a long time. Even Brandy being my fiance and working with us, she didn't start till a couple of events in. But, Richard's been with us since day one. Like we knew right away, all right, we got all these, we can do all this stuff, but matchmaking is like it's like a mystery. It's like magic. We don't know how to do it. We got Richard Cox involved right away, and he's been with us since day one, man. This wouldn't be possible without Richard Cox.
Yeah, and he had his own promotion up in Georgia for a long time before.
He's run some events up there as well. Fighter Soul was his promotion. He does some wrestling promotions as well. But yeah, man, he's a godsend when it comes to being able to match these fights. And he's a coach. And you know, a lot of people don't know, but Richard took a couple of fights back in the day. So he did some tough mans. You know, obviously when he was coming up, it was a little different, less organized. But he still got out there and competed, and he competed. So he gets it. And it's funny, he'll tell you that like when he found out he had to cut weight and had to diet and those things, he was like,
guess I'm a heavyweight. Yeah. Yeah, that's a different world for that. But no, that's great that you guys were able to hook up with him. I thought he came on later. I never realized he was right there at the beginning.
Event numero uno. It was even on our business plan, like Richard Cox. Like, who did we talk to? Richard Cox.
So when you were doing those first few shows, when did you realize that this was going to be like a permanent thing? Like, did you know right out the gate, this is the life, this is what you're doing from now on? Or was it kind of like, let's try it out? And...
You know, I think I realized it for myself. There was two key moments for me in my career. And one was when Josh went to the Ultimate Fighter. So when Josh made it on the Ultimate Fighter, he obviously, you know, was going to be in the UFC, and I had to stick back behind, and I had to like pretty much run things while he was gone. And I had to kind of do everything because now it's just me by myself. So during those couple of months, I just fell in love with the whole process. Before, I was really doing like my part. Josh was doing his part. You know, we had a graphic designer. We had all these things. Well, I started kind of doing everything. I started putting my hands in everything, and I enjoyed all aspects of it. I was like, man, I really, really enjoy this. And I like the hustle and the bustle, and it keeps me busy. And that was around the same time that we started making good money too. Like that was whenever we started making a few $1,000s an event. There was still, I remember Jacksonville was never successful. Jacksonville was like our worst event until like Combat Night 90. It took a long time for Jacksonville to be successful. But the other events, Orlando, Tallahassee, Miami, we were doing really well. We were making good money. And my heart was still in fighting. I still wanted to fight. So I was using these events to travel the state and train with every gym in the state. Like, and it's funny now, I look back, what a genius idea to like train with the fighters that are fighting with you.
Right.
And that wasn't why I was doing it. I was training because I was getting ready for fights. I was training because I was still an active fighter and I wanted to compete. But then, you know, these guys really started showing me love and appreciating that, hey man, the promoter's coming to train with us. We get to punch him in the face. We get to try to submit him and beat him up. And that was where like, you know, that success wasn't realized until Josh passed. So once Josh passed, once again, the torch was in my hand to have to take care of everything. And I had put in all this legwork unbeknownst to myself by training with all these other fighters and building a relationship with all these coaches and these gyms. You know, I would go to Miami and I would train at 4 different gyms: Coconut Creek, MMA Masters, like every gym down there, Wagner Roca's. Like I would get all this great, amazing work, and they wanted me there. They didn't want to charge me a mat fee. They're like, yeah, come in. Like, you know, this is the promoter, guys. This is the guy. If you want to fight, this is the guy you talk to. They would introduce me to the class. And so once Josh passed, it was there was some hesitation about doing it in general. Like, do I even want to keep doing this? And at that point, I realized like, man, this is more than just like what we're doing and how we're doing it is more than just, it's not just a job. It's not just a business. It's like, this is my identity. Like it was my lifestyle. I realized like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I was still actively fighting, but that was the point where I made that transition where like, okay, I might take a couple more fights, but I'm going to be a promoter. Like this is my new life. We did our first pro show. That was a goal. Josh was literally at my house 3 days before he passed. And we conversated about the next year, we were going to do at least one pro event. Like that was our goal. So the first show we had back, pro event in Tallahassee. Bill Carpenter headlined it. And, you know, when we did that event and now there was an avenue, before we were just playing like the starter up, you know, we had to hand them off to somebody for their pro career. But once we had our own avenues to walk them straight to the door to the UFC and continue to build them and teach them how to be professionals and work with them, you know, that's whenever I found my real passion. Like really, really, I was super passionate about it because I like helping people and I love MMA. So it's like I'm doing all my passions into one. I get to talk, help people, do MMA, train. And so for me, that was a big turning point. That was once he passed and I had to take all the reins again. And we did the pro show and we had the direction to get him there. that was a big one for me.
That's cool. Yeah, and I would think all that traveling too, that's given you guys such a presence that you've got access to so many fighters through that, like so many schools and things that other promotions just don't have, because one, they're not fighters, and two, they don't travel. So they live in their little place. So they're kind of scrabbling for fighters. It allowed you guys to build a much stronger, fighter base and things,
We have I have great relationships with every school. There's not really a school in town that, I don't get along with. And when I say in town, I mean Florida and Georgia. I mean, because I went and trained with them. I put in the hours and the sweat and the blood and the tears, and I've grinded next to them. And a lot of those guys that I was training with on the come up are now coaches, like Julian Williams. It's just like you get a bond through training. And Jim Ehlers is another one down in South Florida. Wagner was fighting at the same time that I was doing this. All these guys, like, you get a bond training with these guys, and they learn to trust you, and they learn your character on the mats. It says a lot about yourself, and I learn a lot about them too. So I know who I want to do business with.
So when I'm trying to think of this, when the early days of WWE, they talk about like there was a lot of like territorialism in this stuff.
There was a lot of that here too.
Yeah, and that's kind of my question. You guys were kind of this young promotion with these young guys, and you were everywhere. That had to run into some issues with other promotions and things, but now you guys are the biggest promotion in the state, so that's got to help with that. But just what kind of things did you run into with that?
Well, the first problem is that we've already said it, the other promoters aren't fighters,
right?
Talk all you want, say whatever you want to, but at the end of the day, you can show up to our gym, you can come, and especially when Josh was here, like, I'm a fucking flyweight, and I'm still like, I'll bite your damn ankles, I'll get at your ass. I don't care how big you are. I'm not afraid of any man. I can take an ass beating. I'm okay with that. But when Josh was around too, it's like, okay, this is a massive middleweight.
Yeah.
Who's going to argue with it? Which promoter is going to argue with that guy?
Yeah.
So, most of the stuff that happened were some pretty backhanded, undermined things. Like, we had, the worst was we had an event in Jacksonville, and another local promoter, I'm almost positive I know who it was, but I don't know for sure. So I won't out him. Gave us 5 guys, 5 names, IDs, Facebook pages, everything. So we get to weigh-ins, we have 12 fights. We get to weigh-ins, now we have 7, because all the guys were fake.
Pulled them.
No, they were just...
they never existed.
They never existed. Facebook's got... this guy went to such lengths to fool us. It's not even funny. And we're talking 11 years ago. Yeah. So it's not as easily accessible. Like, we're not messaging the fighters and talking to them and tagging them on Instagram and tagging them on Facebook. Like, it just wasn't as... Social media wasn't as developed as it is now. And we weren't as savvy as we are now. So now we can tell if someone's fake, or it's like they're not being serious or whatever. But yeah, we showed up and there was literally five fights dropped. So now we're down to 7 or 6. And I was like, are they fucking kidding me? Like, we just lost our whole card. A couple of those guys were locals that sold a bunch of tickets. One of them being Zach Elkins. He runs a nutrition company now, Lean Impact. So meal prep for athletes and your average Joes. And Zach sold like 100 tickets. We're like, what are we going to do? Get on social media. We start asking anyone that wants to step up to fight 205, blah, blah, blah. And who do you know steps up? One of my favorite fighters in the world, Tim Lopez.
Nice.
Tim Lopez.
Papa Lopez.
Literally drives from Ocala. He works his shift on Saturday. Tells us he gets off at 4:30. He drives to Jacksonville from Ocala. Weighs in 195 pounds with all his, clothes on. Like, he's a 70 pounder. He's a welterweight. He steps up to light heavyweight to fight the hometown local boy that everybody loves, that sold 100 tickets, and he beats him. I mean, that, like, just, it gives me chicken skin, goosebumps, whatever you want to call it, just thinking about it. Because, one, if we didn't have that relationship with him as a fighter, he didn't love us as much as we love him, he never does that, right? He did that because he loves us. And I know that. At the time, maybe I didn't, but now I can look back and acknowledge that Tim stepped up because he loved us. But also, 2 weight classes up, and not like 35 to 55 where it's 20 pounds, but 70 to 205. Like, that's a lot of weight. That's a big boy.
Big jumps.
And he cut weight to get there. So Zach's probably walking at 220 the day of. I'll never forget, in the 3rd round, super competitive fight. Tim had probably won the first 2. Elkins throws a head kick, and Tim blocks it with just one arm, and literally it hits him, and he like kills over. Like, his whole body falls over because of how heavy the leg was.
Yeah.
It didn't knock him out. It just like dropped. It knocked him off balance, and he eats canvas for a second and gets back up. But that was that was a hilarious event because they tried to make us fail. And it's like, nah, not today, homie.
Yeah.
And in Jacksonville, when we started, there were 3 or 4 legitimate events that ran regularly. Now there's 0.
Yeah, so they did all that work. Yeah, it's crazy in that stuff. It's kind of the same with gyms in a certain way, but it's like it's such a waste of effort and time to worry about what others are doing in this sport, in this field. And it's rampant.
It is.
It's so crazy how rampant it is.
That's
in this
every
field.
business. It's in our field too, but trust me, it's in every single business. Trust me, waiters are bitching about why that person got that 8 top and why didn't I get it?
Yeah.
Real estate agents are saying, why did he get that listing in my office? You know, in every aspect of business, there's haters, and unfortunately, until they learn not to be a hater, they're not going to be successful. That's just how it is. Like, I can spend 30 minutes looking at X promotions page and complaining or mad or bitching about it to Richard or to Ramsey, or I can spend 30 minutes improving combat night. I'm going to spend 30 minutes improving combat night. I'm not going to waste my time on the guy next to me. Whenever I say I literally have my blinders on, they're on 24/7. And I won't sit here and pretend like there's not moments where I falter and I'm like, oh man, why did they get that deal? Or, you know, whatever the case is. But like, I'm always right back on track. Like I don't have time to hate on other people. I don't have time to let it bother me or get me down, because while I'm doing that, I'm missing out on something. And I'm not trying to miss out on opportunities for myself, my team, or my athletes. Like my goal, people always say, like, they'll talk about, you know, UFC fights and like, oh, here's so-and-so for instance, recently, Dustin Poirier's fighting so-and-so. And I was like, who? I ain't never heard of the guy. He's had a couple fights in the UFC. Apparently he's really good. I don't know, but I can tell you every fighter that fought for me last year. I can tell you who did what, who was successful, who's improved, who's done this, who's done that. Like, I have the Combat Night roster buried in my head, and I'll take that any day over fanboying over the UFC. And I love the UFC. I mean, I love Dustin. I love watching the fights. I watch every event that comes on. I'm going to watch the UFC if I'm available. But at the end of the day, my blinders, they're stuck on Combat Night. My company, my business, my athletes, my team. Because if I don't do that, I'm failing them, and I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. That's everyone in this sport too. It's funny. The longer you're in it, the more you get into this stuff, the less you know about the biggest promotion. You know, it's weird because I'm the same way. Like 6 months ago, I didn't know who the hell Duplessis was. Like, I never heard of him.
Yep.
And other people were telling me about he beat so-and-so and so-and-so. And so I don't know who any of those people are. Like, pretty much if you're not in title contention or the champ, these days, I just don't have time for it.
Even
I've got my fighters. I've got, you know, you got your promotion. You start to do that. Actually, you guys interact with the UFC a lot. At one point, I don't know how much still, but like, how did that come about? When did they start calling you as a local promotion? That must have been kind of a trip when you got that call.
Well, it's not so like Josh was in the UFC initially. That was
That's true. Yeah.
I think he even wrote an article or two for UFC.com. He was doing articles for Bloody Elbows. So he was putting it out there very much that he wanted to be more than a fighter. You know, he wanted to be an analyst. He was talking to John Anik, and John Anik was kind of coaching him. And, you know, John even recently did an interview. He thought that Josh was going to one day be his like broadcast partner. He was going to co-hosting with Josh one day because Josh was so well-spoken and he wanted to learn so much. But, you know, that was something that Josh and myself were really good at. And it was natural for both of us is networking, you know? So if we're at a UFC event, I want to know who the equipment manager is. I want to know who the makeup girls are. I want to know who everybody is that I come in contact with, and I want them to remember me. So building that network like that and meeting the matchmakers and knowing the matchmakers and getting their emails. And, you know, some people, it's funny because I see people just tagging people online and doing it. It's like, man, that's just not how you do it. Like, you know, how would you feel if people are only wanting stuff from you? All they ever do is want from you. You know, we would go to the after parties after an event. I remember, man, I can't think of his name right now. MMA Masters 145er, Bulldog, Bully, fought Chad Mendez. Man, I feel horrible. He's a friend. Yeah, I would consider him like an acquaintance friend. But after he fought, we were hanging out in the bar, and you know, Sean Shelby's down there. At the time, Joe Silva's walking around. And you can see people trying to like get stuff from them, like trying to talk to them about business. And it's like, oh man, like that's the worst. If I'm trying to enjoy myself training, the last thing I want is somebody to come talk to me about business. If that's after an event, we're at an after party and we're hanging out, we're having dinner or something, like don't talk to me about what's next. Like let me just enjoy this moment. And I'm sure that's how they felt too. So, you know, I would sit down next to them and I'd see what he's drinking. Hey, let me get him a beer. Like, hey man, like talk to him like, you know, like a human being and not trying to get something from them. So building that network really, and that's what I do the same thing now on social media with these pages that have, you know, millions of followers. People ask me like, how do you collab with, you know, Muay Thai God, or how do you collab with Haymakers or these big accounts? And it's like, well, because they're my friend. I could care less if they collab with me. They're cool people. They post cool stuff. I meet them at events because I talk to everybody. You know, I see this nerdy looking guy over there with his camera and his backpack on. And I'm like, hey man, what's up, bro? What are you doing here? Like, oh, you know, what's this? No one's paying him any mind. Oh, that's a guy that runs a social media account that has 3 million followers.
Yeah. Yeah, you've definitely met some incredible people. And I mean, even this, like, we're here at your home gym, which is very awesome that you have this. But, you know, on the walls, there's signatures of, like, insane fighter. I mean, you got Stephen Thompson up there and stuff like that, which is cool. And I do want to know how he ended up here.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah,
Stephen Thompson, Ian Gary, Boss Rutan, and Ross Levine.
Boss was here?
Yeah, and Ross Levine were all here at the same time. Like it was probably the most epic training session I've ever had in my house, was having all those guys here. It was really dope.
Yeah, that's
But again, like you didn't see me on social media like they don't want that. They're here to train. Like that's what they're here for. They're here to train. They're here to have a good time. We took pictures after and all that stuff, but all down to earth people, and that's really what it is. Like when it comes to networking, is treating them like people. Don't treat them like objects or things that you can take from them or get from them, or how can you use them? Like, no, treat them like people. Become their friend. And if something comes up later that you can be useful to them, be useful. And if they can be useful to you, guess what? They're your friend. They'll be useful to you. Like, you'll help each other out.
Yeah. So we're going to come up on the 30 here, but a couple other things. One, what do you got planned as far as the future of Combat Night? Like I've seen you branch out. You've been working with Karate Combat and stuff like that. What's your next step in all this? What are you wanting to go for? I
think the next big step for us is a streaming deal. I've kind of held off on the past year. That was a goal of mine last year, but we have a lot of things in the works. They've been doing a lot of filming on us, and we got a lot of projects that are kind of like they're cooking. You know, they're not fully cooked, but I think they will this year. And I think our value will go up, and then I think it's time to find a streaming deal. So hopefully this year we get a streaming deal. I don't even need to be with a major platform. It just needs to be something that makes sense and can bring more money to my team and to our athletes. You know, a goal of mine would be, my 3-year goal is to be able to pay debut fighters $1,000 and $1,000. You know, I want to be reasonable, and I want to, and even then I feel like anyone who's getting in there and risking life and limb, you know, it's invaluable to me, honestly. But if we want to run a business and we want to keep the lights on and keep doing the event, keep providing opportunity to get to the next level, we got to be smart with the money. So a streaming deal would allow that. I don't see myself accepting a streaming deal that doesn't increase the fighter pay to that level. And the same thing with my team. You know, they've been with me, most of them, for 11, 12 years. I want them all to be in the 6-figure bracket. I want them all to be making, you know, really good money. And for me, that's my biggest goals right now, is just improving the pay for the fighters and for my team.
Nice. That's a good goal. So this is kind of my wrap-up thing, but I asked this everybody on the podcast. If you could pick, because anyone in this sport has some crazy damn stuff happen to them. There's no being in this sport with the egos and the people and all that without some insane off-the-wall thing happening. If you could pick 1 or 2 stories that are just kind of like that, yes, oh God, or something, you know, it can be from when you were a fighter, it can be from when as a promoter, just what would be the one that just completely stands out to you?
I got a couple I'll try to run through real quick. I think the most insane is when I was in Singapore and got the day notice. Yeah. I was at all week. I hadn't gotten any sleep because we had events. We had a Tallahassee event right when me and Troy got back. So they're 12 hours behind me. So I was working through the night. I was literally like no sleep, maybe 2 hours a day for a whole week. And I'm eating all the street food. Troy was ordering my food for me because it was the stuff he wanted to eat because he lived in Singapore for so long. So he was sending me he's like, you hungry? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I'm gonna order you food. And he would send me food. And I'm like, what is this? Like chicken legs, soup, all this stuff, MSG, like they don't care over there. And so
probably messing with you a little bit at times.
Yeah.
It's an eyeball.
Durian, like this nasty fruit. I think it's called durian
or so. Yeah. That's
horrible.
Foul.
I tried it. It's not good. Yeah. So, I'm literally eating a bowl of noodles at the weigh-ins. Troy's weighing in. They've already done face-offs. Troy's already faced off with Shuya, and they offer Troy to fight John Lineker. So Troy's a fucking savage. John Lineker at the time is top 3 in the world. Any promotion across the board, he's top 3. And if he's in Singapore, he's probably juiced up. Juiced up John Lineker, I'll give him number 1 spot, straight up. So I'm eating noodles, and Troy accepts the fight, and they turn to me, and they're like, what about you? And I was like, huh?
What about?
And they're like, what do you weigh? And I was like, probably like 145. I'm a flyweight, but like probably 145. And they're like, put down the noodles, like go check your weight, let's see where you're at. And I was like, what's up? And they're like, would you be down to fight Shuya? And I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, I would. I have told people for 3 or 4 years leading up to this that are asking me, are you going to fight again? Are you going to fight again? I kid you not. And there's people that will vouch for this. I say, one day I'll be in a foreign country. I'll have my mouthpiece and I'll have my cup and I'll get an opportunity and then I'll fight again. Holy shit. Talk about speaking things into existence. I'm in a foreign country, mouthpiece cup. I get on the scale with my noodles. Boom, I'm 145. All right, finish the noodles, come back and weigh in. So I finish my noodles, I come back, I weigh in, my clothes off like a little like 144 or whatever. Again, I'm a flyweight, so I'm fighting 2 weight classes up. And empty arena. I fight on the same card as Demetrius Johnson. He gets knocked out by a knee. Literally, that's the fight before me. Oof. They're doing 4 cards at one night. So it's four events. It looks like 4 different events when they aired it. But in Singapore, it was all of us fought on one night.
That's a lot of fights.
There's maybe 40 people in the arena when Demetrius Johnson gets knocked out. I'm one of them. Nikki Holtzkin fought John Wayne Parr. Knocks out John Wayne Parr. I'm there. I just finished my fight. I'm literally in medicals watching John Wayne Parr get knocked out. So if like for me, that's like all-time great experience. Crazy, it checks every box.
Yeah.
I'm fighting on the card with legends. A legend gets knocked out. Like it's just insane night. I also got finished for the first time ever in I never got pinned in high school. I got submitted one time in a jiu-jitsu tournament. I'm just one of those. I'm a hard-headed little stubborn son of a bitch. Like I'm not trying to get beat like that. Like you might beat me on points, but I'm not trying to like admit that I just can't hang with you anymore. Yeah. And I got submitted by Shuya. That was really annoying. So for me, that's the wildest story. The ranch at Cowboys was nonstop wild stories. Like the whole time I lived with the Cowboy, he is who he says he is. I remember him home fight week sparring with like 4-ounce gloves, no shin guards with Paul. I was out there when Paul Felder was an amateur. I was a pro. Paul Felder was an amateur. I lived with Paul for like 2 or 3 months. But that whole experience out there was pretty cool. I knew I had it. Really, this is a funny story too. When I was a fighter, one day Bill Carpenter, he hurt his sternum. He bruised his sternum. And I had just got my wisdom teeth pulled while I was out there. I had my wisdom teeth impacted. I had to go to the emergency room. They pulled my wisdom teeth. Right?
There you are.
Well, they sent me to like an emergency dentist the next day. Excruciating pain, and I have to go to this it's like a charity emergency dentist place, because I'm broke as shit. Like I'm not fixing to go drop a couple grand. Yeah. So they send me to this place.
You're where they send the hobos.
Exactly. To get my teeth pulled. So sketchy. And I go back. I'm still going to the gym with the guys, and I'm like day 3 wisdom teeth pulled out, and Bill. I hear Damasio Page. I'm over in the back. I'm hitting the back, and I hear Damasio Page screaming, "If you're not here to fucking be a fighter, then get the fuck off my mat." And he's just like being loud. And he was that was who he was. He was very loud. A lot of people probably don't know who Damasio Page is, but he was a very like loud, aggressive dude. And he's screaming, getting mad. And I'm thinking he's talking about me. I look around and everyone else is sparring, and I'm hitting this bag. And I'm like, fuck that. Yeah. I go get my mouthpiece. I go right up to Damasio next round. I'm like, let's go. And he looks at me like, who the fuck are you? And he's like, all right, let's go. Bro, I slug it out. 5 minutes with Damasio Page, going at it. I hit him with a body shot that made him step back. He hit me with a body shot that made me step back. We're throwing down. I had already trained with Damasio a few times. And the first time I went, he bullied me pretty bad. And I was like, I'm going to get that motherfucker one day. Like, it just stuck with me. And at the end of that round, he said, what's your name, man? And I was like, Mitchell. And he was like, Damasio, and walked away. And I was like, yeah, I just earned that motherfucker's respect. Yeah. And then I go and sit down next to Bill, and I'm like heated. I'm like still like breathing heavy, and I'm like, yeah, fuck that. And Bill's like, yeah, man, my sternum's fucked up. And I was like, yeah, man. I was like, I heard him. I thought I told him, I was like, yeah, he's talking shit about me, whatever, fuck that. He's like, no, man. He's like, he dropped me with a knee to my sternum, and I was done. Like, I couldn't, because I told him my sternum was bruised, and not to like, I don't hit me in my sternum, and he did it anyway. He threw a knee and hit me, and I dropped, and I had to quit. Not quit, but my sternum fucked up. I had to stop. So he was yelling because of that round, and I was like, oh. So it didn't have to do with me.
My teeth hurt.
It actually had to do with you, but all's good. One more, and then I'm done. Also, Greg Jackson's. Only time I've ever been dropped. Melvin Gillard. I don't know what I was thinking.
That'll do it.
I don't know what I was thinking. I hit him with this nasty. I hit him with a clean combo, cross foot cross, and I was in my shit. I was like, oh shit! Like, I landed it clean. I wouldn't say it was super hard. And then he comes forward with a cross, hit me clean with a cross, and I was thinking like, oh shit! And like out my peripheral, I see a hook coming. Boom! And the next thing I know, I'm falling. Like, I'm like trying to catch myself. I'm like running backwards to catch myself, and I fall, and I get up, and then next thing I remember, I'm sitting next to Bill, and Bill's like looking at me like I'm nuts. He's like, yo, are you good? And I was like, yeah, why? And he's like, bro, you just acted out. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, bro, you just were cussing, you were screaming, you were yelling, you threw your gear across the gym. Apparently, I was so mad about the situation. I was like, fuck this. I threw my shit. I was like, irritated, of course. I've never been dropped before. And he got the better of me for sure. But he was, I don't know, stupid.
Melvin Gillard, man.
But we did that. We were so stupid coming up in this sport, man. Like, what we did as athletes, that's why I love the position I'm in now, because I can guide these guys and tell them, like, yo, don't lose brain cells in the gym. Don't do it. Like, don't get in these gym wars. It does you no justice. Get paid for that. Get paid. So it's like all these experiences have helped me become the promoter and the guy that I am to these people, and this mentor to help them out and guide them to get there so that they make it. I know so many guys that don't make it because of the gym wars. They spend all their time there. It's like, no, don't do that.
I lost a lot of career there.
That's how we did it. That's how we did it. It was sparring every day. Every other day was sparring. We'd in class, let's spar.
Oh God, we used to do a bull in the ring a week. Yeah, it was crazy. It was
on top of normal sparring. Like, we would it was stupid. Like, class would be over and we'd still want to work out. Like, let's go do some rounds. And it's like, what are we doing? Me and Matt Muncy would put on 4-ounce gloves and throw down. Stupid.
Early days of the sport, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you sitting down. You want to do a social media shout out and let people know where to find your stuff?
For sure, man. If you're on social media, if you're not following Combat Night MMA, it's time to wake up and follow us. Without a doubt, we've got the best content on the regional scene. There's no other promotion that competes with us. I would even put us up there, maybe even the top 3. I mean, I think we got better content than PFL and Bellator, if I'm being real about the situation. One championship crushes it, but Combat Night MMA, that's Instagram, that's YouTube, Facebook. You can find us everywhere with Combat Night MMA.
Cool. And as always, like, follow, subscribe, etc., here at Under the Cage, and we will see you guys next time. Boss, it's Mitchell.
Thanks, guys. Sorry, I know I can go on. I can just fucking every subject.
Perfect.